All right, well, let's go ahead and get started here. Good afternoon and welcome to our Wellbeing Wednesday session. We're so happy to have alumni, students, faculty, and staff join us today for our wintertime Wellbeing Wednesday. These sessions are a continuation of the mindfulness meditation sessions held over the past 2 years and are a collaboration between the Office of Alumni Engagement and the University Center for Student Wellbeing. As we begin a new year and set new goals for ourselves, wintertime is also when the motivation for self-care begins to wane, especially this year as we continue to try to find our way through the pandemic. Meditation and mindfulness practices can be powerful ways to help us build motivation. During this session, meditations will be taught and practiced together. This session will focus on using mindfulness to build motivation. I'm Audrey Tierney, Director of Alumni Programming, and I'm so pleased to be joined today by my colleagues and alumni, Dr. TJ Smith and Amber Leisure. Before I introduce them, I have just a few notes in regards to the technical end of the session. Throughout the program, your microphones will be muted, but you're welcome to submit questions through the chat feature found on the toolbar at the bottom of the screen. TJ and Amber will answer questions at the end of the program as time permits. Now, a few words about our presenters in case this is your first time joining us. TJ is a licensed psychologist and has been engaged with meditation for over a decade. He recently opened his own private practice in the Pittsburgh area. Amber Leisure has a background in exercise physiology and has taught yoga for 13 years and meditation for 11. Amber currently is the Assistant Director for Recreation Services at Duquesne and has a profound appreciation for the ecumenical approach to the mission of the university. Now I will turn our session over to Amber and TJ.
Thank you so much. This is so nice here. Such a timely talking about motivation. The nice thing about motivation is it ebbs and it flows. And I think really that ebb and flow is sometimes consistent on the time of the year. So I think naturally feel a little less motivated during the winter time when there's less sunlight. And then you add on to that the Pittsburgh clouds and the cloudy weather there. And I think the motivation even more decreases. So we're, I think, presenting this intentionally during a time when our motivation is the lowest, or maybe the lowest. However, what we present here today, we hope that helps you to understand and gain some knowledge and insight about motivation, and specifically how we could use meditation or even mindfulness to help harness our motivation towards those things that we want to move toward too. So we're going to start by John Kabat-Zinn's definition of mindfulness, and definitely it's good to be back here too. I think some of you may have been with us before, so I think this is a homecoming as well, just sort of coming back to this definition of mindfulness. And this will serve as a starting point to really think about motivation and what the relationship to mindfulness and meditation may be. So mindfulness is the awareness that arises from paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally. So again, it's about awareness, it's about attention, and that happens naturally, but it's a certain sort of purposeful attention that is bringing it back to what is exactly happening in the present moment, in the here and now. The on purpose that it's a non-judgmental attention as well. It's one where you can sort of approach the self in a way of more neutrality and less judgmentality. So when we take mindfulness and we take motivation, I think we usually think about motivation maybe quantitatively, almost like it's this inherent quality, like I'm motivated, I'm not motivated, I'm lazy, I'm not lazy, almost like it's a number thing where you could, with video games, my son plays video games, there's always the power bar that, sort of increases or decreases depending on what's going on. And we might actually feel our motivation to be like that, this sort of increase and decrease. And for shorthand, and sometimes you can feel more motivated and less motivated in general. But I think it's really helpful to approach motivation as sort of engagement specific. So it's not, there might be an overall motivation we feel, but usually it's motivation for some specific area of our life or some specific activity in that area. So in assessing the different areas too, that's where mindfulness comes in, when we're looking at our lives, when we're looking to sort of harness and increase and feel more motivated, we want to see what area we'd like to feel more motivated about, what we'd like to pursue in these different areas. Different areas could be sort of more emotional motivation, spiritual motivation, physical motivation, environmental, social, financial, educational. So these are some different areas that we may feel motivated to move toward, to sort of flourish in, or we might feel less motivated too. And I think that's always particular to the individual. So depending on where you're at in your life, where you're at in the year, you may want to move to sort of something more physical, where you're working out and things like that. But for another person, it may be more primary for the financial. That maybe they're at a time in their life when they need to save money for the kids to go to college, and they need more motivation in that area. So really, it's about looking at the different areas, seeing where you feel motivation and seeing where you intend and want to feel motivation toward.
And I like this chart because every once in a while I look at it. I have it on my phone as one of my photos, and it's a good reminder. Sometimes I'll just read over those words, and if something gives me one of those like feelings in the pit of my stomach, I know like, oh, maybe I should like attend to that today. For example, social, you read over social, like, ooh, I still owe a couple people a text back or a phone call, and so like this is just a nice tool to remind yourself that sometimes we get into those single tracks.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that other elements of our life exist, and we need to make sure that we're attending them. And sometimes we lack motivation to attend to those needs. So we're going to really dig into that today.
I'm thinking, you're at the recreation center right now, and it's almost like if you're working out one muscle, not the other. Like if you're working out your hamstring a lot, if that's the area you're motivated to work out, but you don't work out your quad much, you're going to get an injury. And just from what you're saying, I'm imagining that in life too. If you're just working out only this one area, maybe physical, but not working out the social, not sort of feel motivated there, it could sort of contribute to some unbalance.
Not only was that a good analogy, but you also got the muscle pairs corrected, which one would cause injury. If you work your hamstring and not your quad, then that one will involve a hip flexor injury or lower abdominals. So nice work with that.
Oh, I appreciate that.
So, yeah, I'm in the gym right now at the Power Center, and so if you hear clamoring around me, there are pieces of weight equipment on the other side of my wall. So I'm not involved in an earthquake or anything like that. But people are here working out, and people are a lot more motivated here in February, than maybe they would necessarily be in July or August. But also, this is the time of year, right around February, mid-February, that I see participation and exercise start to go back, and we see the regulars again. Now, I'm talking about motivation in terms of exercise and working out, but you can use, given that tree image before us, you might have motivations in other areas of your life, but it all applies in the same way. So we make these big aspirational goals in January, and then about 5 to 6 weeks in, studies show that motivation starts to get less and less and less as we ease back into what drove us to make those goals in January in the first place. And so in the gym, we see this as a slump around Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day rolls around and we're back to the regulars. So we want to think about our own motivation and consider what is it and how does it work and how can we kind of tweak it or hack it to work best for us, especially now in this time that's proven after New Year's resolutions are made, how we can tweak it so that we don't fall off the wagon. So motivation is the why behind an action. We might have emotional, theoretical, biological, or social reasons for acting in the way that we act, but that motivation at its base level is just, why are we doing what we do? We tend to think about motivation in terms of being really excited about doing things, But when we go through our actions, there's a motivation behind it always. So we always have some form of motivation. It's just not necessarily the motivation that we wish to have. So my motivation for laying on the couch after work instead of getting on my exercise bike is because I'm tired. So we want to look into, why am I tired? Or, how can I alleviate those feelings? Because no matter what we do, there is some motivation behind it. We need to consider that. It also acts as a driving force. So it activates motion. It activates movement. Sometimes it motivates us to be more, motivation allows us to be more persistent, even if we're facing obstacles. And we'll talk about obstacles later in this course. But there's often times when we're very motivated in intensity. Are we going to coast or are we going to drive? And when people talk about motivation, oftentimes it's that drive as opposed to coasting that people are looking for whenever they want to build their motivation or tweak it to work for them instead of work against them. And oftentimes that comes down to goals. When we behave in a certain way, we have results and we feel a certain way about those results. So our rewards, intrinsic or extrinsic, whenever we reach a certain goal. Material rewards are oftentimes, you win some money or you joined remember when Biggest Loser was a thing? And then all of the offices were like, we're going to do a Biggest Loser. Everybody throw in $10 and we're going to have this weight loss competition. That is a great example of a material reward system for attaining your goals. Those don't oftentimes lead to lasting change though. It's more the internal or intrinsic reward system that helps us to sustain that motivation over time. And that's getting the personal satisfaction or sense of purpose for what you're doing.
Yeah, it's so important that both of that, the internal and the external, the intrinsic and the extrinsic as well. I just thinking of my son is in 7th grade now, and with academics, he has dyslexia. So, academics has been a bit challenging from elementary school, but now he's doing really well in middle school. Extrinsic motivation, he knows that if he brings home a great report card, he'll get something cool like a Lego. So he got all A's this semester or this 9 weeks. So we got him a Lego. But it was cool. A couple of weeks later, he can actually send an email through their iPad at school. He goes, "Dad, I'm so proud of myself. I ended up acing this test." So that was so cool to hear him say, "Hey, I'm proud of myself." That being that intrinsic motivation. So the extrinsic is there. He gets a little reward, but then he really internalized that too. And that's that pride that you're talking about that really keeps it going, when the challenges come in the way.
And this is a great example because I read a really interesting study on money for grades. So a group of parents would reward their children with an increase of like going from a B to an A with a dollar amount. And then other people the other group, I think it was, you're allowed to read these books if you can get to this reading level, and I think it was Harry Potter. But the efficacy of the reading program, I think it was for reading grades, was astoundingly different for the working towards reading the Harry Potter versus like, here you get $5 because you read at this reading level in school or something along those lines. I'll send it to you. It was really
Yeah, it sounds cool.
I can share it with the group. But I really enjoyed reading that. So we're going to move into mindfulness because after this meditation, we're going to really dig into motivation and how we can bring mindfulness to creating that motivation that we are hoping to have for our lives versus the motivation that we currently have. And a lot of that's going to come down to a sense of presence and being in the here and now. Because when we're on autopilot, we're not necessarily thinking about where we are in this moment and what got us here. We're not thinking about what motivated me to take a nap instead of clean my closet. So a sense of presence is salient in the act of building motivation. So at this point, I'd like for us to all just find a comfortable seated position. And I'm going to shift left and right, forward, back, so that you're even left and right, forward and back. You're not leaning too far ahead or back or to one side or the other. And it's better if both of your feet are flat on the floor, or if you're sitting on the floor, that your legs are crossed slightly so the knees sit below the hips. But above all, it's important that you're feeling comfortable. If you need to shift partially through, you absolutely may. We're going to lift through our spine, raising our shoulders up by the ears, lift your shoulders. And as you exhale, we're just going to drop the shoulders down from the ears. And I want you to pull them back slightly so that you feel your upper back engage. We're going to tuck our chin in slightly, bringing our tongue to the roof of our mouth, hands to the thighs. We'll close our eyes. And just take a moment to address any type of thought that might be persistent in your mind right now, and allow it to sit outside of the room until you're done. And then take in the sounds of the room, or the lack of sound. On your next breath in, lift your shoulders slightly, and on your next breath out, drop them. Take a moment to feel what your body feels like as you're breathing in and out. Noticing the air pass through the nostrils. Noticing the muscles in your chest as they contract and release. Noticing your breath and your abdomen region. Do you feel your abs working as you breathe out? Or maybe you feel a little bit of extra relaxation on that exhale. We're going to breathe in for 4 counts, and we're going to hold that breath for 4 counts, so we're fully exhaling for 4 counts. We're going to hold that empty breath for 4 counts. Let's inhale fully. 1, 2, 3, 4, and hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale fully as far as you can. 3, 4. Hold your exhale. 2, 3, 4. Inhale fully again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold that full breath. 2, 3, 4. Exhale as fully as you can. 2, 3, 4. Hold your empty breath. 2, 3, 4. Big breath in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. Exhale fully. 3, 4. Hold your empty breath. 3, 4. And go back to breathing normally. Focusing now on what your breath feels like as you breathe differently, holding your inhales, holding your exhales. Try not to breathe shallowly. And with the next several breaths, we're going to inhale and bring awareness to our body as a whole. As we exhale, we're going to try to release any tension we're feeling in our whole body. Several breaths. You can breathe as quickly or slowly as you like, but use the inhale to bring awareness and use the exhale to bring relaxation. You can breathe in through the nose, out through the nose, in through the mouth, out through the mouth. Any way you wish to do it, whatever feels right to you. Allow yourself to be heavy on your seat. Every exhale, get a little bit heavier. Breathing in and out. Keeping your mind focused on the breath. If it starts to wander away, gently bring it back. And now that we're in this space, we're present, we're here with our breath. Let's expand our attention to the space around us. We're back to the sounds of the room. How our body feels in our chair. What our breath feels like. What thoughts might be passing through our mind as we gently bring it back to the present moment. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes, holding them about 45 degrees in front of you. Taking in the sights, everything that you see at that space 45 degrees ahead of you. Noticing details, but also taking in the sensation of breathing, the temperature of the room, the sounds of the atmosphere. Being fully here and now. We're taking one more breath in, and as we do, we're going to just raise our arms up over our heads. We're going to inhale, reaching our hands up over our head. Exhale, bring our hands back down to our sides or onto our lap, and we can return to the presentation.
I saw a question come up too, and I'll defer to Amber on this one because you were leading through that nice meditation from Joseph, wondering, when we're doing a mindfulness meditation like this, are we inhaling through the nose or mouth, or and the same for the exhale? What is there a proper way to inhale, mouth versus nose?
Thank you for asking that. And as we inhale and exhale during a meditation practice, typically, if it's not stated, it's your user's choice, because we might be in, especially being on Zoom, some of you might be in a space where you're wearing a mask and it's just hard. You don't want to exhale or inhale in a specific way because of your mask, or I know I get sinus problems with certain masks that I have, they press on my sinuses. So, my breathing is different. So whatever's most comfortable to you. But there are specific meditation practices where the breathing is guided so that you're breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth, or there's a pranayama practice in yoga where we press one nostril closed as we inhale and then switch nostrils and exhale out the other side. There's a lot of different types of guided breathing practices. So and it's a good question because people don't always say it, but if they don't specify nose or mouth, then it's up to you, whatever feels most comfortable to you. And when we're trying to be present, you'd want to breathe in the way that you feel most natural.
Excellent. And after that lovely meditation too, feeling in a nice mindful state, myself feel that relaxation and the form of presence. And definitely I want to carry that with us if we can, throughout the presentation today. Thinking about mindfulness and, that state of curiosity that sometimes comes when we're in a mindful state, and looking at what that holds for us with motivation, and specifically motivation beforehand when we're talking about it. it was more about, let's be mindful of the different areas that we might want to cultivate some motivation to pursue a certain thing within the area. Let's say if it's the physical, it might be fitness. If it's social, it might be reaching out to some people that you value. And another place to bring mindfulness to is where we're at with change and motivation. So when we're talking about motivation, that's the why that Amber is talking about, the sort of motivation that can bring us forward to change, but usually motivation is associated with some sort of change or some sort of continuance. So that's always important to differentiate as well. That when we think of motivation or change, we think of particularly one phase, it's the doing phase. Are we actually engaged in action? But there's a couple other phases that we want to bring to mind when we're considering how you might want to bring motivation and change into your life and where you're at with the different phases. So these 6 changes of change, the first one is pre-contemplation. This one we won't consider much, but this is really where there is no change or consideration of change going on. Nothing's happening within your world that's really pointing to that something needs to change. The contemplation stage, that's kind of the maybe, maybe I'll consider some sort of change. Maybe I'll stay the way I'm doing things the same. That might be the stage of back and forth, the consideration, really contemplating, do I want to bring that forward? So that's one place to bring mindfulness is, are there areas that you're considering changing? Once that becomes that's when we go to the preparation phase. The third phase is preparation and planning. So in order for an action to happen, we have to sort of prepare, we have to plan, we have to gather resources to put it into action, which is the fourth phase. That's the doing phase. So that's what we usually think about as changes, that doing phase, to getting things together, the moving forward. The last phase, the 6th phase, is the maintenance. That's the keeping it going, basically. So when we're thinking about motivation, and you're thinking about areas of your life that you might want to be more motivated and bring about more change, it's always helpful to be mindful, where you're at. Are you contemplating it? Maybe, maybe not. Are you preparing, really making a plan? Or are you actually in the doing phase where you're into action? Or is it more maintenance where you have made the change, but you want to keep motivated and staying motivated? And that really, the transition between that considering, planning, doing, and maintaining is really what we're talking about with habits. And I saw Amber come on here too, so I wanted to leave some space as well.
Oh, thank you. No, I was just thinking about it too with the 6 stages of change. We always think of the 6 stages of change regarding creating healthy habits, but also if we find ourselves in an unhealthy habit, we've went through those same 6 stages of change to get to that unhealthy habit. So, maybe it's like a bad diet or whatever. It's helpful when we're being mindful of our situation and what stage we might be in for making change, to also acknowledge that maybe we're in a maintenance phase of that bad habit that we get changed into. We had to go through a change. We didn't grow up eating pizza every day. So somehow this happened and we made this maybe unconscious decision to do that. So just being aware of what maintenance phases that we're in that moment. And that takes a certain amount of presence and consideration. And this isn't necessarily the free your mind or focus on one thing type of meditation, but more of an active mental meditation of taking an assessment of what are all of our maintenance phases right now in any routine or habit. And I think you were just about to talk about habits.
That's it. And what you're saying is
hear what you have to say.
Yep. It's exactly in line with what you're talking about. I'm thinking when practice becomes a habit, those habits that we have now, we don't even, when they're in the maintenance phase, we don't even look at them as a habit necessarily. They just are. And that's exactly it. If it's a good habit. So, maybe right now, your sleep patterns are pretty, stable. I hope they are. And if there's a stable sleep habit, I'm not necessarily totally willing myself to go to bed at the same time. I'm kind of maybe keeping an eye on it. Maybe I'll go to bed a little earlier, a little later. But once that sleep becomes a habit, we don't have to sort of provide so much focus on it. And that's the thing. However, what you're talking about is, especially working with a lot of college students, sleep is definitely not a given. So to make that a habit, it takes a lot of practice. And a lot of times it's coming off the habit of not having good sleep patterns or having very disrupted sleep patterns. So that's why I appreciate what you were saying there too, that the disrupted sleep patterns, haphazard, random, that itself went through stages of change to get it that way. Most likely, undergraduate, friends and studying and all that can contribute to that disrupted sleep patterns. And it could move towards more of a maintenance of that too. So it's always good to think about the practice is more intentional. It might take a little bit more effort. It might take a little bit more will, almost like the training wheels on the bike. But really the goal is to make it into a habit, which you take the training wheels off and you're just riding the bike and it becomes more second nature.
Sorry about that. How long have we been doing this? That I still don't know when I'm on mute.
Me neither. Me neither. That already happened to me today.
Okay, so we briefly discussed like this maintenance phase, or well, we discussed it quite length with the maintenance phase and in regards to the 6 stages of change. But this is the most difficult stage if you're trying to change behavior. And because I work in a gym, my background's in exercise physiology, I'm just going to continue using that analogy. But for people who are coming to the gym all the time in January, we're motivated when we're in that preparation phase, buying gym clothes, picking out your gym shoes, and learning new equipment. And we gain strength so quickly when we first start exercising that it takes no time at all to go from being able to bench 50 pounds to being able to bench 70 pounds for a person of like at 160 pounds. That would be a normal bench progression. So we're motivated by those small goals that we've reached, and we're getting stronger. We can start to see it. But what happens when maybe your goal is to lose 10 pounds and you lost that 10 pounds? We shouldn't just stop exercising at all, right? Go back to our previous life. We want to maintain that because we have plenty of studies that show us that exercising on a regular basis can help us live longer, healthier, and happier lives. So what motivates us to maintain that momentum once we've reached the first goal that we set? And most of the time when people relapse or fall out of that habit, it's during the maintenance phase because there's less motivation. And the key here is to consider your goals and what motivates you, your reward system. Are you choosing intrinsic or extrinsic motivations whenever you decide to continue a program? Because when we lose momentum, we end up leaving that habit, hopefully the good habit, unless you're trying, I guess you could just reverse all of this for getting rid of a bad habit, right? So when we lose that motivation, we lose the momentum, and then we stop doing that activity that we were doing to better ourselves. So it's important to set some small goals for yourself and always have a goal. And using the gym analogy, so today I benched 70 pounds. My goal for the next month is maybe I can get up to 80 pounds. So by training once a week on the bench and then training a few other muscle groups, maybe by 30 days, I would be able to lift 10 more pounds than I could before. And having those goals in mind and reminding yourself of those goals can be really, really helpful just to continue working towards something. People who run marathons, when they finish their first marathon, in the immediate aftermath, like, yeah, I want to do this again and again and again. But then as time progresses, because it takes some time to recover, they're like, oh, I did my marathon. That's the end. Okay. So it's always good to sign yourself up for races. I know so many people will sign themselves up for races, 8-9 months before the race even happens, just so they are forced to work towards it. But we also want to make sure that we're treating ourselves. So we reach those goals. We need to acknowledge that we reached a goal. We accomplished something that we wanted to accomplish, and that's a big deal. So whether that treat is maybe a cheat day, or maybe that treat is a new outfit, or something that you've wanted to buy for yourself, or maybe just a day to yourself where all you do is watch Netflix. Whatever does it for you, something to look forward to is really beneficial because you did do something and you set a goal, you reached it. And it's important to acknowledge that in some way. It's also important to know your obstacles, and we're going to get into that later. So I'm not going to dig into that. But once you know your obstacles, it's important to have an action plan. So if you know that this is coming or this might happen, what are you going to do about it? Maybe my obstacle to running every day, I made a goal to run outside 3 days a week for a whole year. And there were days where I didn't want to. So I stopped by my friend's, or I drove past my friend's house on my way to home from work. And I tossed my house key in her yard. So I'd have to run to Shawnee's house to pick up my house key so I could get inside. And it worked for me. That was my action plan. It was a little weird, little risky in case somebody sees it and picks it up. But it worked for me. So having that action plan could definitely be a lifesaver, and being aware of it as you approach any type of obstacle is a nice thing to have in your back pocket.
Yeah, I love that method. That's awesome.
It was a little weird. I also didn't tell her that I was doing it. So I would just, because I didn't know I was going to do, like, it felt kind of impulsive, but I was just like, okay. And like,
That's fun. And that's it. It's so individualized with like motivation too. Like that, I know my wife's, used to be a soccer player. So for her, sort of getting down and sort of doing your basement workout doesn't work for her. So she needs to have something to work toward, like a game or a race, like what you're saying, versus other people that might sort of like the solitude that sort of working alone, grinding it brings too. So that's why it's not a one size fit all. And I think a big obstacle is when you're trying to do someone else's workout, or someone else's motivation, or, it could be any area. You're trying to do it like someone else. Maybe you want more peace and you're doing, really silent meditations, but you're really an active person. Well, yoga could do that for you too. If you like the movements, that could bring you more peace too. So that's what, I think a little side message is that the individualized nature of, taking inventory. So the roadblocks too, as a psychologist, I always think about the internal roadblocks. One of them could be the negative self-talk. And this is nice because it's exactly the opposite of what it would be, doing the opposite of what Amber just said too. So like negative self-talk, so all of us have maybe the critic that, might bring us down. Other people might have an achiever, an idealist or a perfectionist that sets really high standards. They don't have to be that dramatic. It could be more subtler going on there. But it could be the opposite of that. Rather than sort of setting the small goals, it could be setting too high of a goal, setting a goal that I need to be able to run 7 days a week. And that happens so often when I'm working with clients, that they set the high goal and then you're almost setting yourself up for failure there too. So that critical or the perfectionistic, idealistic, self-talk there, that could set you up for failure. And then the treat yourself too. The opposite of that could be not treating yourself, withholding, restricting, or being quite mean to yourself. So that's more the negative self-talk, where it's like, oh yeah, you're in, 3 days a week, big deal, or oh, you ended up getting out for a walk with the dog today, big deal, or you ended up, taking some time, quiet time to relax, no big deal. So it's kind of, working against yourself. And I think we all have different flavors of negative self-talk that we could be mindful of, knowing those parts of ourselves that kind of get in the way of motivation, that get in the way of change. We think that they help in a way, when we're being a little critical of ourselves or setting high ideals. We want to help. We want to move toward that goal, but in a way it interferes with it. Another part of ourselves that we want to think about too, which would be a roadblock, is fear. There could be fear of changing. Like what would that be like to sort of try something new that change involves or motivation involves? Let's say if you wanted to, sort of get in shape, what would it be like to go to the gym? but also just the fear of the change itself. If someone's, constantly stressed or constantly anxious, imagining themselves being more motivated to feel calm and to work on that. Well, that would be scary to be calm. So I think fear can get out in the way, fear of doing something new that, is included in feeling motivated and changing, but also fear of the result of that as well. And then the other thing would be the not attending to other needs. If really your goal is to become more connected with other people, you're realizing that, a sense of maybe loneliness or a sense of solitude, especially after the things that have been going on with social isolation, you might focus all on that. And then you find yourself really being able to talk to people over Zoom or, being able to connect with people in a good environment. But then, lo and behold, you find yourself neglecting more of your, physical needs, that you can't attend to everything at once. So I think it's really, in a way, bring us back to where we started with that tree.
I see that at the gym a lot. So people will get really motivated to get healthy and work out, and they come in every day for 2 hours. But at first, for 1 week or 2 weeks, even, you can fit that 2 hours every day into your schedule. But then all of those things that we've been neglecting and that we would have normally been doing in that 2 hours starts to creep in. It's like, oh, I haven't seen my children in a week, or no, that's probably not a thing, but my laundry's piling up, or we haven't had a good grocery trip in a while, or the things that you might do, or whatever your habits are. So I see that, and that's one of the biggest reasons that people drop out of coming in, because they went really big at the beginning, all this time set aside, and then life creeps back in. So when we're assessing ourselves, being mindful of our schedule and being mindful of our limitations and our timing and our schedules, setting those small goals and being realistic with ourselves can definitely go a long way.
Yes. The key to the balance and the harmony. We'll do a brief recap and then we'll do a meditation. Meditation can be the medication, very little side effects. I hope positive side effects like relaxation. But motivation, first step, decide what you like. That's that setting of an intention. You look at the area. You want to move towards something that you like in the beginning too. It's easier to sort of motivate oneself to sort of move towards something that really is consistent with your values or something you can do and want to do. And then as the motivation grows, you can incorporate things that might be a little bit more difficult. Make a plan. In order to move towards that goal, you need to sort of have a plan set. You need to know the places that you're going to go. Be kind to oneself. That's really the thing of when we're trying to change, we need to accept where we're at. We need to accept what we're feeling. So although you want to change maybe a certain area of your life, that doesn't mean that you can't say, hey, that's where I'm at right now. And that's okay. So that, it's really, when we get in the way, we could be overly critical, assuming that'll help motivate us. But really that acceptance, paradoxically, is a motivator. And one is better than zero. So some movement toward that goal, some motivation, some change is better than zero. So really validate the small steps. All right. As far as more of a motivation meditation practice, I'd like you to begin by taking a couple moments to get settled into a comfortable position. If you feel okay, you can even close your eyes. Maybe even look a bit downward. Allow your spine to soften and your spine to lift up as well. And then for your shoulders to soften. Today we'll be practicing remembering motivation. Taking a full breath in and a long, slow breath out. Allow the mind to rest on the breath. Call to mind something where you might be feeling a lack of motivation. Perhaps it's with a task at work or something you've been putting off at home. Maybe it's reconnecting in a relationship with a friend or a family member. As you envision the area where you're not feeling as motivated, listen to these questions lightly and see what comes up. There's no need to figure anything out. If nothing comes up to your mind after these questions, just continue to focus on the breath and just notice what thoughts arise, letting them pass through your mind as if carried by a gentle breeze. Ask yourself, when it comes to this area, what is my greatest aspiration? What about this area is most important to me? What might be getting in the way of me addressing this area? How do I want to show up in relationship to this area? Notice how you feel when considering these questions, the specific sensations in your body. And again, there's nothing to figure out here, just to notice what comes up for you as you ask these questions. If this area was in progress or fully addressed, what would that mean to you? If the area was in progress or fully completed, what would that feel like? See if you can really feel that feeling, allowing yourself to fully absorb it. As you get glimpses into this experience of feeling accomplishment, consider how you can access this place again the next time you face challenges with motivation to this area. How can you use these feelings as a source of focus and motivation? Can these feelings serve as a motivation for you to engage? And finally, ask yourself, what is my intention going forward? Let's finish with a deep, full breath in. And a long, slow breath out. And then open up your eyes when you're ready.
Thank you, TJ. That was great. I always like visualizing attaining a goal. It really helps to make it seem more realistic. So I hope everyone enjoyed that. That was really helpful and something that you can take with you when you're thinking about setting goals for yourself and how to go about it and what it would look like when you reach that goal.
And that was just sort of, it was definitely a guided meditation, but sort of any of your own questions from stuff that you learned today, you can bring along with it. It doesn't have to be following exactly what we did. It's just really taking that mindfulness, that curiosity, that place or that area you want to be more motivated with, looking at what's getting in the way and what needs to happen to sort of move forward, and then really combining the present with the future by having a glimpse of what that's going to feel like when you accomplish the goal.
So I want to end it on a note of motivating you to practice more mindfulness within your day-to-day life, whether that's, a few seconds here and there or a seated practice that takes a much longer time. But if you have 30 seconds, you could try square breathing or focused breath like we did in the first meditation earlier today. Maybe you have 3 full minutes and you could try a 3-minute breathing space or progressive muscle relaxation. And those are terms that you can Google, and YouTube has a lot of great videos, and Spotify has some good sound bites too that you can listen to that are progressive muscle relaxation or 3-minute breathing space meditations. So there are lots of options on there that you can just listen to. But if you have 5 to 10 minutes, you could do an open monitor meditation. That's similar to what we did earlier today. We were just taking in the sounds of the room and what thoughts are passing through our mind, what our body feels like, using all of our senses to try to just be here and now. Or you could do an online guided meditation, or maybe you feel a little bit more active. Some people have a hard time sitting still for long periods of time. So trying out a walking meditation where you just walk and you focus on what it feels like to walk, the weather, the sights that you see around you. Really, you're just in all of these, you're just being present in the here and now, paying attention to everything that you see. And if you have 15 or more minutes, the options are limitless. So it's really up to you. You could take a yoga class, you could do a longer meditation, maybe it's right before bed and it helps you wind down. But the internet is a wonderful place. Headspace has some really good meditations. The Calm app does. But I tend to just do Spotify because it's free and there's a really big variety of things on there.
Thank you so much. Our message for you is that you can do it.
So does anyone have any questions or compliments?
Well, I know that these have really helped me through this time, and I'm really looking forward to trying out some of these motivational techniques because I know winter is a bad time of year for myself personally. So I really appreciate that. So far, I don't see any questions coming in through the chat, but I I thank you both for such a wonderful session today. And I also was just so excited that we could welcome TJ back to join us today as well.
Oh, thank you so much. It's good to be back.
That was great teaching with you today.
Oh, it was good teaching with you too. Warmed my heart on this cold day.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you all again for attending today's Wellbeing Wednesday. Be sure to watch for a follow-up email that will include the link to register for all of our upcoming virtual events. Have a great day, everyone. Stay safe. And as always, go Dukes.
Yeah.